everybody. 0250. Sure, Bravo 10, go. Thank you, 12, listening out. This engineer here, ready configuration.
Hello, I'm Noel Deeger, commander of the 136th Air Refueling Wing of the Texas Air National Guard. Before we begin our brief report on the aims and the activities of the 136th, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the overall basic missions of the Air National Guard. I'm sure you already know that the Air National Guard has a federal mission, which is to train, equip, and provide a cohesive, capable force to replace or augment regular active duty military forces anywhere in the world. And this is our basic federal mission. In addition to that, we have a responsibility to the state to provide men and material to aid disaster-stricken citizens of the state whenever called upon. So ours really is a twofold obligation. I'm quite proud of the manner in which the men of the 136th have fulfilled these obligations in the past. I think when you've seen them in action, you will share my pride in them.
An afterburner kicks in and a thrill runs up the spine of everyone around. A camouflaged bird of freedom leaps into the air. America's first line of defense is up. The F-4 Phantom jet fighter, a sophisticated weapons system that was beyond imagination a very few years ago. The F-4 is capable of speeds in excess of 1,600 miles per hour. It can deliver a destructive blow of unimaginable proportions. It is the finest airplane of its type in the world. It is useless without proper maintenance and support. The KC-97L, the kind of support which keeps the Phantoms flying. The Stratofreighter, as the big bird is known, has been around a long time, and its track record is impressive. During the era when air-to-air refueling was being transformed from an experiment to a vitally important day-to-day practice, the 97 paved the way with its power, size, and dependability. Refueling rapidly became an excellent way to provide greater range, increased flexibility, and a stronger strike force for the entire Air Force fighter system. When the United States Air Force began its trend toward more and more pure jet aircraft, and the KC-135s began to fill the slot as refueling tankers, the KC-97s were turned over to the Air National Guard. They're good birds. Too good to be set aside. The merger of the 97s and the National Guard was a bigger bonus than most had anticipated. The Guard mounted twin jet booster engines on its birds and hit the air. Now with 6 engines instead of 4, the operating envelope of the KC-97 was equal to anything the Air Force flies and needs refueled, including the super-fast Phantoms and even the new F-111. The war in Vietnam came along, and pure jet KC-135s in the Air Force inventory were committed to the Southeast Asia theater. That left a void in Air Force operations elsewhere in the world, a void that was quickly filled by the Air National Guard. The 136th quickly saw short-term action from the Arctic wastelands of Alaska to the Pacific and on to the Caribbean. These were guardsmen and guard airplanes, not active duty forces. The National Guard was beginning to work hand in hand with the regulars without being called to active duty. Their performance met every demand made by the Air Force, and the National Guard was committed daily to aid in regular Air Force training exercises within the continental United States. In 1967, a program called Operation Creek Party was begun, and for the first time, the proven National Guard ability to work with the regulars was established full-time in a foreign theater. With a base of operations at Rhein-Main Air Base, just outside Frankfurt, West Germany, National Guard tankers provided day-to-day support for proficiency requirements of regular Air Force jets stationed in Europe. The presence of the Guard planes also provided a vitally important extreme weather emergency refueling capability. The bad weather, which covers much of southern Europe during the winter, can quickly place a multi-million-dollar fighter in jeopardy. The Guard stands ready to cancel that threat. All this, and still the Guard was not called to active duty. This is a crew briefing room. The men are members of the 136th of Dallas, Texas. Like many of their missions, the one today will range over southern Europe to within 30 miles of the communist East German no man's land.
Good morning, gentlemen. We've just received our first drag order of the morning. We'll be refueling fighter aircraft out of the United Kingdom on close ground support missions in the South German area. The weather in both the UK and South Germany is marginal, and refueling is mandatory for the fighters to get back to their home bases. Major Crow will give you the detailed briefing. Major Crow.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Major Hugh Crow, as a civilian,
Your
flies
aircraft will
jets
be
for Braniff
327.
International.
Call sign will be Taxi 02. You will be refueling with receivers from the 49th TAC Fighter Group out of Alconbury Air Base outside of London. The call signs of the fighters will be Avon 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65. As the Colonel briefed you, the aircraft will be coming out of Alconbury, just north of London, coming across the Channel, into France, across Belgium, carrying on close support, ground support, in southern Germany. After they finish their mission, they will climb to an altitude of flight level 310, coming into the refueling area. Today will be bomb holder. As they come into bomb holder, they will descend to flight level 200. Make sure that they are reminded of an altimeter setting of 2992 as they come into the refueling area. At this point, you will pick them up. They will be low on fuel at this time, as the Colonel briefed. There are low ceilings all across southern Europe today, so they will need the fuel to get back home or get to their alternate abort base. Each aircraft will be taking on 4,000 pounds of JP-4. We have a rendezvous time planned of 1800 Z. Also, they have 2 young pilots on the mission today. Boomer, they would like some extra dry hookups if at all possible. Get your offload to each one of the receivers. If we have time in the area, then give them the practice dry hookups on the boom. Now, just to remind you, I know you're well aware of it, on a bomb holder track, we are close to the communist sector of Germany. They are jamming as usual. Make sure you take good fixes, stay within the area. If you have a chance, take some celestial shots to pinpoint the position and to keep the fighters in the area with us. After refueling, exit the area, recover at Rhein-Main. At this time, I'll turn the briefing over to the mission commander, Colonel Smith.
Lieutenant Colonel Hank Smith. He works for Bell Helicopter in his civilian life.
Climbing out to the east on more or less a canned departure route. That will take us over near Stein and then turn west over toward Kern and then into the bomb holder. To miss the civilian commercial traffic, we will be at various levels in the climb, hold at various levels in the climb. Even though we're directly headed for the bomb holder range, we'll probably have a hold at 12,000 feet and possibly another one at 16, and enter the bomb holder refueling range at 18,000. We will be hitting them in sequence, and Nav will start the rendezvous as far out as possible to give you a good chance to identify them and get them down to altitude in time to get into the bomb holder for a quick rendezvous. We'll even though we're going to do practice refueling after we've completed all 6 of the initial refuelings, we'll hold those to only the 2 pilots that are inexperienced, give them 2 dries apiece, and then we'll send them on their way. We will be at flight level 200, and we'll recover immediately after the mission into Rhein-Main. And we have Ramstein as the alternate. Nav, would you keep a check on the weather throughout the entire mission and let us know if either Rhein-Main or Ramstein go below the minimum so we can make alternate plans for that. Also, be in a position to give the fighters an alternate base if we see any single fighter or the entire flight might need a alternate. During that detail part of the flight is to provide a stable platform for the fighters so that he has something from which to reference his airplane. Our boom operator is talking him into position and trying to keep him in a specific point in reference to the boom, and so that the boom operator himself flying the boom has a not too great a job to manipulate that boom and to insert it in the fighter receptacle, or to, if we're refueling with the other manner in which we're pulling a drogue, to have that drogue in a position on the fighter's wing for his probe. So either of these two methods, we need to provide a good, solid, stable platform that in which we're not climbing or diving or changing direction. Many of the fighters are capable of staying in position and even hooking up in pretty steep turns, but particularly these inexperienced two pilots today will want to provide as constant a reference for them as possible. During the initial part of the flight, the navigator is very busy in getting us to the exact point to start the rendezvous, bringing the fighters in to complete their rendezvous until they have a good visual on the aircraft. And from a 5-mile point on in, the boom operator is really the director of the entire operation.
The first contact we have with the fighters after the pilot turns the receivers over to us is we call them and get a radio check. After that, we clear them into the observation position, which is the right wing of the airplane, of the tanker. From there, we bring them over to a pre-contact position, which is 50 foot behind the aircraft. From there, in the contact position right under the boom, and then we make our contact. After our fuel is offloaded, which we offload about 5,000 pounds a minute, we clear them out, we'll disconnect, clear them to the left wing of the aircraft, which is reform area. The refueling in our case in Europe is to sub for the 135, the jet tankers, which are being used in Southeast Asia. It's a training situation where we come in with our 5 units that are combat ready, and the 2 units that are from New York and St. Joe, Missouri, who are waiting aircraft until they become combat ready, to come in and refuel these F-4s, 100s, EB-66s, allow them to fly longer missions, more sorties, and greater range on the aircraft. It's a known factor that once an airplane is on the ground, lands, turn around, this is when you've got problems with it. As long as it's in the air flying, it's in good shape, so air-to-air refueling is the answer.
So that's our role as an Air National Guard unit in direct support of the regular Air Force. But the 136th also has a vital role to play within the confines of the state of Texas. One of our finest supporters is our Commander-in-Chief, the Honorable Preston Smith, Governor of the state of Texas.
Serving as governor in a state as large and as diversified as is Texas offers many opportunities, and it offers many challenges. No one man could possibly cope with all the hundreds of responsibilities of such a job were it not for a wide-ranging staff of dedicated people. Far more important, however, than the contributions any of us are able to make is the tremendous continuing effort by the hundreds of guardsmen of the 136th. When tornadic winds ripped through the city of Lubbock, leaving behind a tragic tangle of rubble, among the first Texans to respond to the call for help were National Guardsmen. And among the first National Guardsmen were the men of the 136th. The same is true of the disaster at Corpus Christi following the onslaught of Hurricane Camille. The 136th was, as always, on the scene. Their planes were in the air, bearing aid to the stricken area as soon as the call was sounded. I was proud to take part in ceremonies declaring the 136th an outstanding unit, and I'm proud to be their commander-in-chief. Proud, yes, and thankful that Texas has such fine men to call on in time of need.
Just as the Texas Air National Guard combines the responsibilities of state and national obligations, so does it offer the rewards of both. The home base of the 136th is Hensley Field, but due to the worldwide commitment and responsibility, the men soon become familiar with much of the world. It is indeed rare among National Guard units for the men to spend their spare moments discussing their favorite cities in Germany or France or Switzerland, and to be constantly looking forward to their next visit to a favorite spot on the continent. The streets of Heidelberg and Amsterdam and Munich and San Juan are as familiar to most of the men of the 136th as are those of Grand Prairie, Arlington, Dallas, and Fort Worth. There's one of the rules of team efforts that the better the team performs and the more valuable it becomes to those it serves, the more opportunities it enjoys. So it is with the 136th team. They perform an international service, and they reap international rewards. There are, of course, those all-important support missions which must be performed the year round, like men to keep the tankers flying safely. The 136th must have men of high integrity to accept the responsibility for aircraft safety and performance. Many of the men who work on KC-97s during guard activities work on the super jets of commercial aviation in their civilian occupations. And there are other considerations which are equally important. When you move as many men across as many international borders as often as we do, just keeping them properly inoculated can get to be a project of major proportions. To say nothing of keeping pay records, personal data, and promotion information sorted and in smoothly flowing channels. It's a giant job, one which the 136th has worked at for a long time. Keeping up the heritage and traditions of excellence handed down by previous generations of guardsmen is in itself a healthy challenge. The demands are great as the rewards. But the thing which matters most is the job must be done and is being done professionally and with pride. The 136th received recognition of its consistent record of excellence in 1970 when the regular Air Force awarded its Outstanding Unit Award to a National Guard unit. If you know much about the United States Air Force or the Texas Air National Guard, you know that not just anybody can get in. Now you know why.
That's our story, simply stated. The 136th Air Refueling Wing of the Texas Air National Guard. We don't just train. We perform in providing a valuable and vital service to the United States Air Force and to the state of Texas. Our motto is Nullis Secundus, second to none. We've been striving to live up to that motto since the unit was reformed here in Dallas after World War II. And we're dedicated to continuing our efforts for as long as the United States of America and the great state of Texas and you, the citizens we serve, need us.